The numbers, exclusive to Global News, indicate 34% of Canadians still believe Justin Trudeau would make the best Prime Minister, a number which is down 5 points since the beginning of the election. The Conservatives' Erin O'Toole is at 29%, which is up 4 points, while the NDP's Jagmeet Singh is up 6 points to 29%. Also changing since the first week of the campaign, Jagmeet Singh is now the leader Canadians trust the most, surging 5 points to 21%. Justin Trudeau is now second, dropping 6 points, but still a point ahead of the Conservatives' Erin O'Toole, who gained a point to 17%. When asked who would say anything to get elected, Trudeau and O'Toole bumped up 2 points, while Singh dropped 1.
What we've been seeing on the question of leadership has really gone through a transition over the space of the last 6 months. Prior to the election campaign, what we saw was that Erin O'Toole, in particular, was having a very hard time introducing himself to Canadians. That's changed. The other thing that we saw is that while Jagmeet Singh, the leader of the New Democratic Party, had a certain appeal with Canadians, it wasn't a specific type of appeal. It didn't really define itself in a really clear way, other than people just felt a little more positive about him. But overall, people really only saw that there was one person who was in the position to be the Prime Minister, and that was Justin Trudeau. That's changed now that we're into this election campaign, and the other two candidates are getting better defined and are much more competitive with the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, than they were prior to the campaign. If anything has happened in those first 2 weeks, it's really been the closing of the gap between Justin Trudeau as a national leader and his two major opponents. For Erin O'Toole, less about sunny ways and more about competence. Where he seems to be getting stronger against the Prime Minister is everything that has to do with managing the government and competence. So really where Justin Trudeau seems to be losing is not to specifically any individual candidate, it's specific aspects of what his profile was before. It seemed to be going to two different leaders, and it's got him in a squeeze. Litigating the performance of the government over the last 6 years, the leader who's in the best position to do that is Jagmeet Singh. And if he feels that he's in the position where he can even challenge the Liberal Party as potentially being the official opposition and replacing them with the NDP through the course of this election campaign, that's when Jagmeet Singh becomes incredibly dangerous for the Prime Minister. Because you can see on all the issues that relate to sunny ways and credibility, particularly on progressive agenda items, Jagmeet Singh is in a pretty strong position. The single biggest strength that the Liberal Party had back in 2015, got less so in 2019, but has personified this government for the last 6 years, is the profile and position of the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, relative to his competitors. What's happened during the course of this campaign is he's come back to earth. He's now really seen as in a similar bracket compared to Erin O'Toole and Jagmeet Singh. So that big advantage that the Liberal Party had on leadership previously has really dissipated. The problem that creates for them is now they have to start relying on things like policy and other sorts of things that they've really not necessarily been their strengths, through the course of the last 6 years. And the biggest asset that they previously had, which was the Prime Minister's profile, has now become a bit of a weight for them. So it'll be interesting to see how they deal with that through the course of the rest of this campaign, because really what this election has turned into is a referendum not on the performance of the Liberal Party, but on what Canadians think about the Prime Minister.